Retro.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, voice of Hera and REBROADCAST, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Their behavior is continually unexpected.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley, and along with my co-host Jay Krebs, we bring you Star Wars news, reviews, and discussions 3 times a week. And we are coming back to you with an extra episode this week. In fact, this is going to be a replay of episode 538, which we initially released back in 2023. More specifically, this is a replay of our discussion of episode 11 from season 2 of The Bad Batch, which was called Metamorphasis. Why are we replaying this, you might ask? Well, this just so happens to tie in nicely with the last 2 episodes of the Clone Wars that we discussed, both in episodes 930 and 933. So we thought that this would be an appropriate time to air these episodes again. So, Jay's going to join me again here in just a second, and with that, I'll say, the dish is lying, the signal's boosted to maximum output, the shield is down, we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. This is the replay of episode 538, where we are discussing Metamorphasis from the second season of The Bad Batch, which is episode 11. Enjoy, and thanks for listening.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we'll be taking a look at the latest episode of The Bad Batch in this episode. But before we get into this monster-sized edition of the show, Jay can remind everyone where we can be found around the internet.
Yes, indeed, Dennis. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right, the dish is aligned, the signal is boosted to maximum output, the shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. This is our discussion of episode 11 of season 2 of The Bad Batch, which is called Metamorphosis, and this will be a full spoiler discussion. So, Jay, if you wouldn't mind, could we please get the summary of the episode?
Yes, and I love what you did there at the intro. So, having recovered their ship in the previous episode, the Bad Batch has a very uncomfortable discussion with Sid. The Bad Batch agrees to take on one last mission before possibly going their own way. Sid tips them off to a recently crashed transport ship and wants them to recover the cargo. However, when they arrive at the ship, all aboard appear to have been killed, and they discover some sort of creature on the loose. The creature experiences rapid growth and evolution as it absorbs electricity, and when it gets free of the ship, it evolves into the Zillo Beast. The Empire soon arrives and subdues the Zillo Beast as the Bad Batch make their escape. They know there is more going on here than they realize. At the Tantus Research Station, Lama Su is coerced into telling Dr. Hemlock that they can get Nala Se's cooperation by finding and acquiring Omega.
Mm-hmm. What did you think about this one?
Wow, what a great episode. I mean, hello, this is what we've been waiting for the last, I don't know how many episodes. But seriously, and here's the Zillo Beast. We had kind of hypothesized that maybe we would be seeing it, and we thought maybe it was the big Mechno Beast, but lo and behold, here it is. And
Indeed.
I have to say, I was really surprised, but what a great episode. Can't wait to break it down here with you. But what do you think?
Well, as I was saying at the end of our discussion of The Mandalorian, what a great night of Star Wars. First, I watched them in the order of the season premiere of The Mandalorian and then this. And I just was like, this is fantastic. This is outstanding. This is so much great Star Wars in one night. And the way they revealed the Zillo Beast was really cool. You know, they didn't just say, here's the Zillo Beast. They gave us some of the creature that evolved into the Zillo Beast. And yeah, it goes back to a classic couple of episodes of the Clone Wars, so that tie-in was fantastic. And then they tied it into the future of Star Wars in a neat, tidy little bow here as well. So just so much to like about this episode. And we didn't really cover everything that happens in that summary that we just gave at the beginning of the episode either. There's a lot more that's going off. So with no further ado, let's jump right into it. And everything starts with some brand new type of ship to us tumbling out of hyperspace. And it's got dust and dirt and debris flying off of it. There's electricity sparking from various points. We go inside the ship, and there is a clone commando running around with an electrostaff, and then something is stalking it overhead, and then the clone gets eaten.
Yeah.
What'd you think about this introduction?
Well, first of all, I saw Clone Commando and I was like, oh, wait a second, we're getting a Clone Commando in here. And then, it just sets it right up like a horror movie right away in space, And so I was thinking, oh gosh, what are we going to get out of this one? This is going to be insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way they handled this creature on the ship is very much like the Alien franchise, the way they handled the xenomorphs in those. And, they left goo all over the place. They didn't have the acid breath or anything like that. But the way they just kind of creeped around in the shadows, even to the point where this creature, the first time you see it, it doesn't even have any eyes, just like the aliens don't. And it has a similar shape with, the quadruped with the tail, and, the aliens have more things coming off their back and stuff. But it seemed like this was very much inspired by the work done in Alien and Aliens.
Oh, now that you say that, I can totally see that. I didn't even think of that, honestly.
Mm-hmm. But then that's the last we see of that for a little bit. The scene shifts to Tantus, where 3 shuttles escort another one of these transport ships to the mountain. Now, the last time we saw Tantus was at the end of season 2 when Nala Se was being delivered. So I was really excited that we're getting back to that storyline, because it's not so much that I forgot about it, but it was just kind of like put aside. And I was like, well, are they ever going to do anything with it again in this series? Or are they saving that for something else? But at any rate, we are introduced to a new doctor by the name of Dr. Hemlock, which I thought that was interesting because that's a poison. In fact, the one that killed Socrates, of all things. And then he meets with Nala Se, and he's trying to convince her to join him in the work that he's doing. But she points out, I'm not really motivated after my entire civilization was destroyed on Camino. And then we have a number of these scientists, these women scientists that are running around. We have one by the name of Emery. That's how he addresses her. That informs him that Transport 904 is missing. And Hemlock immediately orders a retrieval unit to find it and get it back. So what did you think about everything that was happening here at the Tantus base?
Well, first of all, when they said something about the asset, for a split second, my mind went to Grogu. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, are we going to get like a Mandalorian tie-in with Bad Batch in the same night? And then I'm thinking, wait, no, this...
That would have been clever.
Where am I going with this? But with Dr. Hemlock, I have to say, first of all, he's very interesting visually because he's got a slight scar in one of his eyebrows, and then he kept messing with his gloved hand, which makes me think that he's probably got a prosthetic, but he just, the way he just kept messing with it, and his voice was just like liquid velvet. So I'm very, very intrigued by this guy, but I have to hand it to Nala Se in that, she was basically, nope, not doing this, not helping you. You can just, kiss my Kaminoan butt, basically. But, oh man, I felt for her though, because of course her whole civilization is lost. But what do you think?
A lot of same things you did there. And so, we know you've got another transport showing up with something that we have no idea what was on it. Can't imagine it's another Zillo beast, but maybe we'll find out everything they're doing in Tantus at some point in the future. One of the things I'm wondering about is all of these scientists that are wandering around, these older women. He addresses one by the name of Emery, and I just wondered if there's anything to it. So I looked up the translation for that, and it means home strength, brave, powerful. So I didn't really come away with anything from that afterwards. I can't help but wonder if all of these women are clones themselves, and if so, of who. There was some resemblance to them, but they didn't look identical like the clone, the clones from Attack of the Clones did. So anyways, I don't really have any thoughts developed around that other than just vague suspicions. So
Interesting.
keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
But so anyways, we also find out that Lama Su is still alive in this scene. And I really got the impression that Admiral Rampart was leaving him to be killed by the clones the last time we saw him. So that was pretty much a surprise.
Yeah, totally. I'm right with you on that one. So that was actually a pretty pleasant surprise, honestly.
Yeah, I guess it just falls into the old Star Wars and Marvel rule that if you don't see a body, you can't consider them dead. And sometimes even if you do, they come back.
Yeah, that's true too.
Right. So the next thing that happens is we get the Havoc Marauder, and they are in hyperspace, and the team is having a very testy conversation with Sid. And, Omega says, we were stranded on that planet and you did nothing to help. And her response is, I don't understand what you're upset about because you got off now and you got your ship back. So, and so it's such typical Sid. I mean, she didn't do anything to help. We don't know that she even tried to do anything to help. She didn't protest that she tried to do anything. The last time we saw her, she said it may take a few days and she hung up on them. Mm-hmm. But we don't know that she did anything in that time at all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the thing of it is too, is that they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because they can't exactly go off on their own because as they point out, Sid could turn on them very easily and she knows a heck of a lot about them that she could turn over to the Empire. But then again, they're kind of stuck with having to do these things for her because of that. And it's you feel bad because that they don't want to have to do that. And who was it in that episode that when they did the tech faster, I can't think of his name, but they warn them that Sid's going to turn against them.
Oh,
Maligi, yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have two minds of this. I feel like we're being set up to believe that Sid's going to betray them at some point. But I also feel like we've gotten enough of those hints that she's aware of how much she owes them and that she, potentially could do some sort of betrayal and then the Lando reversal on top of it. But I do appreciate the position that the Bad Batch finds themselves in. They're having this conversation and Sid's like, okay, well, I got this tip for you on this new job. There's this freighter that crashed and I'll, go get something, bring something back that's valuable and we'll split it. I'll give you 30%. To which Tech points out, like, that's our normal rate. She's like, okay, fine. This one time 35. And then Hunter just continues to stare at her and they get a 50-50 split is what they agree to on this. What I found so funny about that scene was that Tech and Omega and Wrecker were all ready to accept 35% and then 40%, but Hunter just continued to glare. And so, she would say a new number and then they'd all Wrecker kept smiling and then they'd look at Hunter and they'd see him glaring. So they'd turn around and start glaring again. Yes. And then the next number would come up and then they'd start glaring and they just continued that process. But that's all on the side to the point I was going to make, which was, Hunter ends the conversation with Sid by saying, what makes you think we'd come back?
Yeah, because I love that.
Well, and she issued a threat, which was, don't come back if you don't come back with something valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
well, test me, bandana.
Yeah. And when he says, what makes you think we'd come back? But then Tech has got a bit of a cooler head about this and says, okay, we need to be a bit more diplomatic if we're going to leave because she's got a lot of information on us and could put us in a bad position.
Right.
So I think there's part of me that really likes this idea that they've had enough of her nonsense and backstabbing, which is not entirely the right word. But at the same time, they know they just can't make a clean break, that they have to do that. They do have to end it on better terms than that, so that they don't have that, coming after them at some point. And who's to say what that even is? I mean, because, you got her to reluctantly agree to a 50-50 split. And what's to say that even if after you make that split that she, if pressed against the wall, she wouldn't turn on you anyway?
That's so true. And I got to hand it to them, though. I mean, they've really learned a lot about being worldly just in the relatively short amount of time that they have been mercenaries. And just to be able to work that in the way that they have, and just to understand that, okay, if we do this, this could be advantageous. But as, Tech pointed out, we can't really sever these ties. She knows too much. So, I mean, they've really come a long way in a very short amount of time, I feel like.
Yeah. The other thing I appreciate about this scene was that it really gave Hunter an opportunity to be the focus of all of this with the way he was talking to Sid, because so much of the season, while he's been in it, Tech has had his moment to shine a couple times. Wrecker has featured an episode. Echo has done so. Crosshair has done so. We still haven't seen him in a long time this season. So I got to feel like he's going to be coming back at any moment now. But the way he kind of led the team there in that discussion with Sid without even saying a thing to them. He just glared back at Sid, and then we got his thoughts on everything for a change, and kind of his perspective was nice, because I like Hunter, but I kind of feel like he is the guy in the group that has the least personality. And kind of what most people think about him is just kind of what they want to see in him, because he doesn't have the, I think we've talked about this before, but he's not boisterous like Wrecker, and he's not so calculating like Tech, or cynical like Crosshair, or, innocent like Omega. He's just kind of this guy that's in the middle of everything.
Yeah, he's the strong and silent type.
So they get to the planet, and they land in a nearby village. They are in the dark, so they start looking for the ship in the dark with their flashlights. And then they get there, and the ship has got no hull markings. So this is not something that the Empire really necessarily wants their name attached to when it comes down to it. They're kind of they're really keeping it on the down low and secretive with that. And they begin exploring the ship, and it's dark. There's no one's there. They see a lot of damage. Rucker is impressed by the electrostaff that they find, and they determine that whatever caused all this damage, it wasn't likely to be human. And then Tech heads off to the bridge, and I nearly jumped off the couch. I was like, no, that's the first rule of horror movies, Tech. You don't separate yourself from the group.
And then he says, your concern is unwarranted. I'll be fine. And he just kind of goes off, just on his own.
And here's the thing, is that this series has got me at a point where I was willing to believe that something could happen to him.
Yes.
Because because they whittled the group down. We lost Crosshair at the beginning of season 1. We've lost Echo, to working with Rex. And what's to say that, it's not like these guys show up again anywhere else in the future part of the timeline.
Right.
That, in the last 5 episodes of this season, that they don't start whittling down the group to nobody. So,
there's really no rules when it comes to the Bad Batch that we know of. So, yep.
And they've killed our favorite clones before. So
I know.
All right. But anyways, they the rest of the group discovers the lab, and this is where they start dropping all the breadcrumbs that lead us up to the big reveal. And this was just so well done. It's really cold in there. The room is reinforced, and then Omega makes the observation that the equipment is Kaminoan, but it's got a different configuration than what she's used to at Tapoka City. And as the episode goes on, she's talking about she was aware of other projects that the Kaminoans were doing, but they were off-world, and she wasn't provided with any of that information. What did you think about all that? Were you following along? When did you start putting this all together?
Oh, I thought it was brilliant because, like you said, they're dropping these little breadcrumbs of things that were happening. And as you pointed out, just the fact that nothing was marked, this hull on the ship was completely blank. There was really nothing attached to anything having to do with the Empire other than the fact that there was a clone commando on the ship. And just the fact that Omega knew so much about everything, and that they were just kind of dropping these lines, which are kind of seemingly throwaway lines. But once you start thinking about them, you're like, oh my gosh. Like this is incredible the way that they've put this together. So I was really impressed.
And then they finally see the creature, and I was kind of making that comparison to Alien before. And again, it was up in the ceiling, and it's got the tail, with the spikes on it, so it's kind of serrated and stuff. And It has eyes, it has no eyes, lots of teeth, and it eats the electro staff right out of Wrecker's hand. And it's very agile, impervious to blaster shots. And then the power comes back on, and it kind of runs to deeper into the ship. And this is when Hunter tells Tech, "Hey, we all got to get off the ship." But they find the creature soaking up electricity at this turbine, and it's impervious to their blaster shots. So Tech shoots the turbine, which blows a hole in the wall that the creature escapes out. I love Tech, but that seemed like such a bad idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they get out and they kind of start sharing some of the information that they've learned. And Tech is going to go back in to find out more about it. And Omega says, "Well, I'm familiar with Camino and technology. I'll help you out." While Hunter and Wrecker are going to start tracking this creature down. And Tech makes that observation that it likely ate the crew, so it's probably not hungry and it won't eat the villagers. That just freaked Omega out. And I mean, kind of reminded us that although she's integrated into the team, she still is this young teenager at this point.
Right. And we've pointed out that she's, yeah, like you said, she's older than the team, but she's just very not seasoned when it comes to things like that. And I'll be honest, when we were seeing some of these first glimpses of what ends up being the Zillo Beast, you were thinking of Alien. Well, when I was seeing those scratches on the hull and that type of thing, I was thinking more Jurassic Park. But then, this isn't the first time that we've seen a creature that feeds on electricity. I mean, Minox do it, but wasn't there a creature in one of the the last season where Omega had to go into the dark, and then she had the flashlight? Didn't that thing feed on electricity too? So I was kind of thinking maybe it was something like that.
Oh yeah. Now I remember that. I can't remember what that creature was called.
Yeah, I can't either.
Yeah.
But that was my first thing. I was like, okay, is this like a descendant or some kind of relationship to that creature? I was floored when it ended up being the Zillo Beast, honestly.
Right, yeah, because it finds the power station outside the village, and it climbs up and it starts just eating electricity, and then the Marauder comes up behind it after it's been shooting at it in the forest, and it lifts up its head and it opens the eyes. And I think that was just so brilliant because the shape of the head had changed, and even when it was on the turbine in the ship, it was Hunter or Wrecker who made something like the comment, like, "Does that creature look different to you now?" Because it already started evolving. And so this is, again, the breadcrumbs I was talking about. It kept getting bigger. Its features were changing, but it's went through this metamorphosis. And that's the thing. Is like I completely forgot about the title of this, even though they put it on a title card at the beginning of the episode, that we should have expected this creature to change. But I remember when it got to that power station and it started absorbing electricity, my wife, my son, and I looked at each other and were like, "Is this the Zillo Beast?" Because it too, was oblivious to blaster fire, and the way it was crawling up on things and kind of doing the kaiju Godzilla King Kong routine that we're all used to, it was like very similar. And then again, it lifted its head up and it opened its eyes. I was like, "Yeah, that's the Zillo Beast." We all nearly jumped off the couch. That was just such an incredible reveal. They did such a good job with that.
Oh yeah.
I was not expecting that at all. When I saw the title for this episode was going to be more Metamorphasis, I was expecting a change in like the Bad Batch itself.
Yes.
Or a change in like Crosshair would come back, that he had changed or grown or something like that. I was not expecting this. And like you said, we all had maybe speculated that the Creature from the Entombed episode or that machine was going to be the Zillo Beast, and when it didn't happen, I put those thoughts aside that we'd be seeing it, and here it is again.
Yep, me too. So it's kind of very satisfying to see that our prediction kind of came true, even though it wasn't the exact same creature. But yeah, I'm right with you. I thought that metamorphosis was something to do with the Bad Batch itself. But remind me, the whole reason why Palpatine wanted to clone the Zillo Beast in the first place was because of its armored plating, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
It was. And they make that observation over the course of this episode as well, a couple times in a couple different places.
Okay.
And in fact, after the Empire shows up and they subdue it and they get it back into the transport and then put it into whatever liquid stasis that it goes back into, there is a scene on the Marauder where Tech puts up the image of the Zillo Beast, and there's all this Arabesh that's talking about it, and it's some very basic stuff. I tried to translate it as best I could, but some of it's small, a little bit blurry. But it, the top of the screen says something like Specimen A, and then it says Zillo Beast growth level 1, and then it talks a bit about the legs, arms, and hands being very dexterous and quick. That the tail could be used as a weapon. Other parts of that screen talk about the scales and how they are layered and that they're incredibly dense. And then there's a thing at the bottom that says threat. I've actually just about recited everything that was on that screen. So,
wow.
They could have just put a tag on there and said, big monster scary or something like that. But because it was kind of like what you'd almost expect to see on a PowerPoint presentation when someone's introducing this monster to you for the first time, as opposed to maybe necessarily making like a scientific analysis of it.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, that's one of the things that I love about everything that we get from not just the Bad Batch, but everything, that we can actually translate this, and they've put so much thought into what they're putting on the screen, even though it's just for 2 seconds. Like you said, it could have just been, said big scary monster, but they put so much detail into it. I treasure that. I just love it.
Mm-hmm. And then there was this great conversation amongst the Bad Batch there where, they don't know where they were taking this creature. They don't even know it's called the Zillo Beast at this point. They just keep calling it the creature, even though it says Zillo Beast on the monitor. But there's far more going on than what they originally realized. But the epiphany that they have is that the Empire did not destroy Kamino to end cloning. They destroyed Kamino so that they would have a monopoly over it, so that they would control all of it. And of course, we all know what the end game of the cloning is from the Rise of Skywalker. It's the return of the Emperor.
Yes.
But this Zillo Beast is part of that program. How does that fit in?
That's what I'm trying to figure out, because obviously we don't see, I don't want to say we don't see anything that comes out of the Zillo Beast as a payoff, but I have a feeling that if we do, it's in ways that we aren't quite understanding yet at this point. But I think it's kind of obvious that something must have happened along the way that failed, because I feel like Palpatine needed to have Nala Se and the likes of her in order to make the cloning successful, and we know he struggled.
Yeah, and now that you say that, it makes me think that, we think about everything we learned in the Rise of Skywalker, the novelization, and then like the Shadow of the Sith book that Adam Christopher just wrote, that the cult of the Sith there in Exegol kept failing to create a body that was capable of holding Palpatine's essence. So is the thought that they introduce some Zillo Beast DNA to try and make a tougher body? Or is it really just that there's parallel projects going on here? They were cloning all kinds of things because that's how they were going to exert control over the galaxy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Boy, that really makes you think, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And then the final scene we get here is that we're back on Tantus. Lama Su has arrived, and Dr. Hemlock is talking to him about how they need Nala Se on board with what they're doing. And Lama Su is trying to basically taunt Hemlock, and it's like, if you don't get the results, then you're going to find yourself in a similar position to what I found myself in. And Hemlock's like, you understand why you're here. You better produce a way for me to get Nala Se on board, or else. And that's when Lama Su suggests that they need to find a young clone girl if they want to exert any control over Nala Se. They don't specifically mention Omega by name, but we know who they're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Because Nala Se and Omega had that relationship.
Mm-hmm. And here's something about that, though. As far as the Empire knew, the Clone Force 99, which included Omega, died on Tapoka City when Rampart destroyed it. And when, which one of the clones was it that saw the Marauder and saw Clone Force 99 and told Rampart that, he had eyes on them? Rampart murdered him.
Mm-hmm.
So how are they even aware, or how has it come to pass that they know that Clone Force 99 still survives? I mean, I guess they were just on Coruscant and made a mess there, but I'm not certain that anyone actually made that ID that entire time.
Well, there's got to be a choice number of people that knew, because there would be no other explanation for that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right, obviously Rampart knew, and then there's got to be a few other ones other than the clone that he killed.
Yeah. Well, the belief is that she's alive. So if they want to exert control over, they're going to have to get Omega, and I am asserting that then they will threaten to do something Omega if Nalase doesn't cooperate. So
right.
But the other thing is that is as simple as that, or is there something about Omega that holds a key to what the Empire wants to accomplish as well?
And that could be the case too.
Yeah. There's just so many possibilities with this. And these, between the Mandalorian, with what we saw them doing on Navarro and in that base that Dr. Pershing, had once been advising on, via hologram, where we saw the strand casts in the tubes, and they didn't know what they were when they were trying to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And now what's going on Tantus and stuff like that, they really are building up stories that lead into what was going on in Exegol. At least that's the way they all appear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That it's eventually going to kind of kaleidoscope together into this picture.
Mm-hmm. And here's the other thing, just a thought. If Ahsoka is looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn, the original Thrawn stories, Heir to the Empire, and that trilogy was about them recovering Jorah Saboth, who was a clone of a Jedi.
Yes.
And then cleaning the cloning tubes from Tantus. So is the eventual Thrawn story going to have something to do with this as well? All the cloning that's going on.
Oh,
Pure speculation on my point. So.
Oh no, but I love that thought, and just to be able to kind of tie it in back into those original Thrawn stories somehow too. Oh, I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Lots to contemplate as we get through the remainder of the season of the Bad Batch and going forward with the Mandalorian and other stories. So we'll have to keep an eye on those.
But I love it because it's keeping us on our toes. And that's half the fun. So, yeah, bring it on.
Okay. Well, any other final thoughts on this before we wrap it up?
No, I think we've covered it all. Just, great episode.
Yeah, great episode. Great night of Star Wars TV.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that every week lives up to this, but wow, that was just fantastic. I had such a good time with all that.
Take it when we can get it, that's for sure.
Okay. All right, there you have it. That was the replay of episode 538 of Podcast Stardust, where we discussed episode 11 from season 2 of the Bad Batch, which was called Metamorphasis. If you couldn't have guessed why we were replaying that, after discussion, and hopefully after you'd already rewatched the episode, you got the point. Tied in nicely with all those episodes about the Zilla Beast. But again, thanks for checking that out, and we hope you've enjoyed the discussion. If you did, please make sure you've subscribed to the podcast on your podcaster of choice. We'd also appreciate your ratings and reviews. We've been picking up a lot of traction lately, and we thank you all for sticking around and recommending the show to others. It's really been helping with our growth. If you want to catch more episodes beyond what you're likely to find on your podcatcher, one of the best places you can do that is over on retrozap.com, where the entire catalog of the show, all other 933 episodes, including the original version of this one we did back in 2023, can be found. After that, I'd like to remind you that you can find us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. Jay has set up some Pinterest boards for us. We got lots of stuff going on over there. The show is available over on YouTube and YouTube Music. It's audio only. No video. We're just not there yet. One day we'll join the 21st century and get into the YouTube thing. Just not yet. Just as a reminder, coming up the rest of this week, tomorrow we'll be back to our regular release schedule with the discussion, or the first part of discussion of Trials of the Jedi, and on Friday we're getting into some recent Star Wars news. But hey, thanks for listening to this replay of episode 538, everyone. Have a great rest of your week, and until next time, may the Force be with you.